In a time when the British people yearned for salvation from years of financial torment, Rachel Reeves ascended to the helm of the Treasury with bold promises of stability, prosperity, and a golden era of economic renewal. She stood before the nation, a beacon of hope, vowing to deliver a meticulously crafted plan to rescue the United Kingdom from the brink. Yet, as the calendar turns to March 22, 2025, the grim reality unfurls before us. Growth has crumbled, borrowing has erupted into chaos, and the government now scrambles in a frenzied panic to unveil an emergency budget, an act of desperation that shatters every illusion of competence. This is not the future we were promised. This is a betrayal of catastrophic proportions, and the British people, already buckling under the weight of relentless bills and a merciless cost of living crisis, are about to be plunged into an abyss of higher taxes, weaker growth, and a financial meltdown spiraling beyond control. Are you furious at the betrayal of Britain's promise? Do you feel the weight of this economic disaster crushing our great nation's spirit? This is your country, your future, and your voice that they're trying to silence. Don't let them win. Subscribe right now to stand with us as we fight for the truth and expose the chaos threatening Great Britain. Then, pour your anger, your fears, your hopes into the comments below. We need to hear you. Britain needs to hear you. Hit that subscribe button and speak out. Because if we don't rise together, who will save our homeland from this abyss? Love Britain? Then subscribe now. Don't let our countryside fall, our heritage fade, or our dreams crumble. Your click is your stand for this great nation. Do it for Britain, now. When Rachel Reeves assumed the mantle of Chancellor, she painted a vision of a Britain reborn. She assured the nation that her stewardship would herald a new dawn. Stability would reign, growth would flourish, and prosperity would lift the weary spirits of a populace battered by years of economic strife. Her grand proclamation? A single, carefully orchestrated fiscal event each year. A solitary budget to set the nation on an unshakable path to glory. Yet here we stand, not even a year into her tenure, staring down the barrel of an emergency budget. This is no mere tweak, no minor recalibration. This is a frantic, last-ditch effort to salvage a strategy that has collapsed into ruin. The government's credibility lies in tatters, shredded by the stark reality that Reeves' so-called master plan has failed spectacularly. What went wrong? How did a chancellor who swore she held the keys to economic salvation lead us into this maelstrom of despair? The numbers paint a picture so bleak it chills the blood. Reeves unveiled her inaugural budget with fanfare, declaring it the sole tax-raising spectacle of this parliament, a one-time sacrifice for the greater good. But the facade has crumbled. Growth, once projected at a modest yet hopeful 2%, has been slashed to a paltry 1%, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR. To the untrained eye, this might seem a trifling dip, but in the cold, unforgiving world of economics, it is a death knell. Less growth translates to fewer jobs, stagnant wages, and an economy teetering on the edge of collapse. The Treasury's coffers, already strained, now face a gaping void, forcing Reeves to claw desperately at the pockets of taxpayers already stretched beyond breaking. And then there's borrowing, a runaway train careening toward disaster. The government anticipated borrowing £6 billion in February, a manageable sum by their reckoning. Instead, they borrowed nearly double, £11 billion, an overrun so staggering it defies comprehension. This isn't a clerical error. It's a neon-lit warning that the economy has veered wildly off course. More borrowing begets more debt begets crippling interest payments, and those payments siphon funds from the very services, hospitals, schools, roads, that Britain's beleaguered citizens depend upon. Reeves promised fiscal discipline, but what we've received is a reckless spree that threatens to drown us all. What lies at the root of this calamity? Look no further than Reeves' punishing tax policies, a blunder so grievous it has set the economy ablaze. Her decision to hike national insurance stands as a monument to folly, slapping an additional £20 billion in taxes on businesses daring to hire workers. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Companies, already battered by a hostile economic climate, recoiled in horror. Hiring slowed to a crawl, pay rises vanished into thin air, and consumer spending, the lifeblood of any thriving economy, withered. The OBR sounded the alarm from the outset, but Reeves, deaf to reason, forged ahead, igniting a vicious cycle of stagnation that now engulfs us. Inflation, that relentless spectre, compounds the misery. The Bank of England, poised to slash interest rates and ease the burden on families suffocating under soaring costs, has been thwarted. Inflation remains a stubborn beast, entrenched at levels that keep rates locked at a punishing 4.5%. Why? Because government borrowing, Reeves' reckless lifeline, has fanned the flames. By rewriting debt rules to permit an additional £50 billion in borrowing, she unleashed a torrent of cash into an economy already choking on excess. Too much money chasing too few goods, the textbook recipe for price surges. Yet the government, blinded by hubris or incompetence, refuses to heed the lesson. The result? Energy bills that defy affordability, food prices that mock the struggling, and tax thresholds frozen in a cruel game of fiscal drag, dragging millions into higher tax brackets without a whisper of relief. This is no abstract theory. It's the lived nightmare of the British people. The government calls it fiscal drag. We call it theft by stealth. As wages creep up to match inflation, unadjusted tax bands ensnare workers in higher rates, siphoning away nearly half their earnings. For the first time in history, millions who never dreamed of paying top-tier taxes find themselves ensnared, their paychecks gutted by a system designed to punish resilience. This is the backdrop to the emergency budget, a confession of failure so profound it reverberates through every household, every business, every corner of this beleaguered nation. If Reeves' initial budget was the bedrock of prosperity, why are we here, facing this frantic rewrite? The answer is simple. Her plan has imploded. Growth has evaporated, borrowing has ballooned, and tax revenues have fallen short of the rosy projections she peddled. The emergency budget isn't a strategic pivot, it's a white flag waved in the face of collapse. And make no mistake, this is no minor adjustment. This is a seismic upheaval, a full-scale economic reset that will strike at the heart of every taxpayer, every family, every enterprise. The government, cornered and desperate, has three grim options: raise taxes to unprecedented heights, slash public spending to the bone, or borrow yet more in a gamble that could break the nation's back. Each path promises agony. None offers salvation. Reeves' first budget extracted £40 billion in taxes, a burden she swore would suffice. Yet here we are, bracing for more. Income tax looms as the most obvious target. Through fiscal drag, the government has already stealthily swelled its coffers, freezing thresholds while wages rise, ensnaring millions in higher brackets. Teachers, nurses, small business owners, ordinary strivers, now forfeit vast chunks of their income to a treasury ravenous for more. But this silent plunder may not sate the beast. Whispers abound of outright rate hikes, particularly for higher earners, though the middle class will bear the brunt. Year after year, this invisible tax will tighten its grip, a perpetual noose around the necks of the hardworking. VAT, too, lurks as a menacing spectre. A swift increase would flood the treasury with cash, but at what cost? Every loaf of bread, every utility bill, every necessity would soar in price, a dagger to the heart of families already bleeding from inflation's wounds. Then there's capital gains tax, poised to punish those who dared to save, invest, or build wealth amid the chaos. Landlords, investors, retirees, the government's message is chilling. If you've clung to any shred of security, we will take it. Businesses, already reeling from national insurance hikes and lofty corporation taxes, teeter on the precipice. Further increases could topple them, unleashing a wave of closures, layoffs, and despair. Tax hikes alone won't fill the void. Reeves has already wielded the axe, carving £5 billion from disability benefits and winter fuel allowances, a taste of the brutality to come. Now, the NHS, that sacred institution buckling under strain, faces deeper wounds. Longer waiting lists, fewer doctors, crumbling wards, these are the wages of austerity redux. Local councils, teetering on bankruptcy, may see their lifelines severed, leaving streets unpoliced, schools underfunded, and communities abandoned. Pensions, the fragile shield of the elderly, could falter as the triple lock wavers, plunging retirees into destitution as energy and food costs soar unchecked. Infrastructure, once heralded as the engine of revival, hangs in jeopardy. Roads, rails, housing, Reeves' grand promises now ring hollow as funds dry up. Great British Energy, Labour's vaunted solution to sky-high bills, fades into myth, leaving families to shiver through another winter of extortionate costs. This is not investment in Britain's future. It is a retreat from hope, a surrender to decline. The financial markets, those unforgiving arbiters of trust, watch with growing alarm. Reeves' borrowing binge has rattled investors, pushing up the cost of government debt. A misstep in this emergency budget, a tax blitz sans growth, a borrowing spree sans restraint, could trigger a meltdown rivaling Liz Truss' infamous implosion. A weaker pound, soaring interest rates, a credit rating in peril. These are not hypotheticals but imminent threats. Businesses, sensing the storm, hesitate to invest, hire, or expand. Some contemplate exodus, lured by nations offering stability and lower taxes. If they flee, the UK's economic backbone snaps, leaving a hollow shell where prosperity once stood. For ordinary Britons, the emergency budget is no abstract policy. It's a guillotine poised to fall. Energy bills remain a cruel overlord, food prices a daily torment, and mortgage rates a millstone crushing homeowners. The average household, already hemorrhaging hundreds more each month than years past, now faces a fresh assault. Higher taxes, diminished services, and a government that offers no reprieve. Young workers find doors to opportunity slamming shut, small businesses, the lifeblood of communities, teeter on collapse, and pensioners watch their savings dissolve as inflation gnaws at their dignity. This is not a temporary squeeze, it's a generational wound. High taxes and feeble growth strangle ambition, while cuts to schools and councils erode the future. Inflation, stoked by Reeves borrowing, keeps interest rates aloft, rendering homes, loans, and dreams unaffordable. The British people, promised a lifeline, have been handed an anchor, and it's dragging them under. Rachel Reeves entered office cloaked in gravitas, the first female chancellor, a symbol of Labour's economic prowess. Now, she stands exposed, her credibility in ashes. Public trust evaporates as polls scream of disillusionment. Businesses, once cautiously hopeful, now seethe with betrayal. Within Labour, mutterings grow. MPs who tethered their fates to her vision now tremble as the opposition brands this a tax bombshell of historic scale. Even Keir Starmer, who staked his premiership on stability, watches his authority erode as the economy unravels. History offers no mercy to chancellors who falter. Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget fiasco ended in disgrace. Gordon Brown's legacy was scarred by the 2008 crash. Reeves, lacking the alibi of global shocks, owns this chaos. Her tax hikes choked growth, her borrowing fueled inflation, her promises crumbled to dust. The emergency budget is her last stand, a gamble to restore faith or a tombstone for her tenure. Double down on taxes, and she risks revolt. Pivot to cuts, and she appears weak. Either way, her days may be numbered, her downfall a cautionary tale etched in Britain's economic ruins. This is a government adrift, an economy in peril, a people betrayed. The emergency budget looms not as a solution but as a harbinger of worse to come. Higher taxes, deeper cuts, more borrowing. These are the tools of a regime out of ideas, out of time, out of trust. The British people, resilient yet exhausted, stand at a breaking point. How much more can they bear before the nation fractures? Reeves promised stability, she delivered turmoil. She promised growth, she delivered stagnation. She promised competence, she delivered catastrophe. The emergency budget is her confession, her capitulation, her cry for mercy in a storm of her own making. But mercy is not forthcoming, not from the markets, not from the public, not from history. The British people will pay the price, and the only question is how steep that price will be. What are your thoughts? Are you enraged, terrified, resigned? Share them in the comments. We need to hear from you. And if you're not yet subscribed, do it now. This crisis is unfolding in real time, and you cannot afford to miss what's next. The truth is our weapon. Subscription is your shield. Join us, and let's face this darkness together.